My ex-business partner accused me of hiding company profits and sued me for fraud. In court, he said, she stole from the business. I quietly presented the company's audit report, which showed he had been embezzling funds for years. His lawyer went silent. I started a logistics company in Houston, Texas with my former business partner, Daniel. We had known each other for over 10 years. He was one of those people who could charm anyone in a room. Smart, smooth talker, the kind of guy who always had connections. I was the one who handled operations, contracts, and finances. We made a great team, or so I thought. In the beginning, we both put in money, time, and effort. It wasn't easy, but after a few years, the business took off. We started landing bigger clients, and the money followed. Within 3 years, our company was generating solid 6-figure profits. That's when I started noticing things that didn't add up. It started with small things. I'd see expenses in the company books that didn't make sense: meals, flights, hotels. I wasn't included in any of these, and when I asked Daniel, he always had an excuse. That was a business dinner. That flight was for networking. You worry too much about numbers. We need to spend to grow. I let it go. Maybe I was overthinking. Then, there were vendors I didn't recognize, companies that didn't match any of our contracts. When I checked the payments, they were all just under the amount that would trigger a second approval in our system. That didn't sit right with me. I confronted him. Do you not trust me? He laughed it off, like I was being dramatic. Come on, we're making money. You're acting like we're struggling. I backed off. I should have pushed harder. By 2020, COVID hit, and business slowed down. I suggested cutting expenses, lowering unnecessary spending, no travel unless absolutely needed. Daniel wasn't on board. He was still spending like nothing had changed. Then, things got worse. Invoices started bouncing. Payments were delayed. Clients would pay, but somehow, the money wasn't stretching like it used to. I sat down and went through our books, line by line. That's when I saw it. We weren't just spending too much. Money was disappearing. I hired an external forensic accountant. I didn't tell Daniel at first. When I finally mentioned it, he flipped. Why are you bringing in some outsider? We don't need that. I handle the finances. If you want to waste money, go ahead. I didn't back down. The results? Over $400,000 unaccounted for. Daniel had been paying fake vendors, companies that didn't exist. When we traced the payments, they were going straight to his personal accounts. He had been stealing from the company for years. I felt sick. I sat him down. Showed him the reports. His reaction? Denial. This is a mistake. Those are real business expenses. You don't understand how things work. I had the records. Bank statements. Fake invoices. Emails where he approved payments for vendors that didn't exist. He still denied it. I removed him from the company. I cleaned up the mess. I could have sued him right then and there, but I didn't. I just wanted to move on. A few months later, I got sued. Daniel was claiming that I had hidden company profits and stolen from the business. He was demanding $250,000 in damages. I read the lawsuit 3 times, trying to understand how this was real. The same man who had embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars was accusing me of fraud. I called my lawyer. We're not settling. Daniel arrived in court with an expensive lawyer. The guy went all in, painting Daniel as the victim, the one who built the company, the one I supposedly betrayed. They said I had manipulated financial records. That I had withheld company funds. That I had destroyed Daniel's reputation and career. Daniel sat there looking heartbroken. Like I had ruined his life. Then it was my turn. My lawyer stood up. We presented the forensic audit. The judge flipped through the report. Bank transfers, money going from our company to fake vendors to Daniel's personal accounts. Emails where he approved these payments. Invoices that matched nothing in our records. And the final nail? An email Daniel sent to our accountant asking to adjust the books before the audit. Daniel's lawyer went silent. The judge looked at Daniel. He had nothing to say. Then, Daniel's lawyer asked for a recess. The judge granted a 15-minute recess. Daniel and his lawyer bolted out of the courtroom like their seats were on fire. I sat there, calm, waiting. I wasn't stupid, I knew what was coming. They were either going to try and settle, or they were about to pull some stunt. When they finally came back, Daniel's lawyer had regained his composure. He had a new strategy. They changed the story. Now, Daniel wasn't denying the financial transfers. Instead, he claimed that I was the mastermind. His lawyer stood up, all confident again. Your Honor, my client was misled. He trusted the defendant. She was in charge of the finances, and she manipulated the accounts in a way that made it seem like he was responsible. I almost laughed. The sheer audacity. Daniel sat there, shaking his head like he was the victim. She tricked me, he said, voice all broken. I didn't even realize what was happening until it was too late. His lawyer continued, saying I had framed Daniel and then orchestrated the audit to pin it on him. There it was. Their last desperate move, make me the villain. My lawyer didn't even flinch. Your Honor, let's go over the facts again. My lawyer walked to the evidence table. Calm. Cold. Precise. First, we have financial transfers directly from company accounts to fake vendors that Daniel created. The defendant had no access to these vendors. Second, we have emails where Daniel personally authorized these payments, including messages where he instructed the accountant to affix records before the audit. Third, my client never handled wire transfers above a certain amount. That was Daniel's role. Then came the final blow. And lastly, Your Honor, we have documents showing that Daniel had opened personal bank accounts under different names. These accounts matched the ones receiving payments from the fake vendors. Silence. Daniel's lawyer rubbed his temples. He knew they were screwed. I thought this was the end of it. I really did. But Daniel wasn't done. After court was adjourned for the day, I walked to my car, feeling drained but confident. That's when I got a text from an unknown number. Drop the case, or things will get ugly. I stared at the message. What was that supposed to mean? Then, a second message popped up. You don't know who you're messing with. I took a screenshot and sent it to my lawyer. Did Daniel just threaten me? Looks like it, my lawyer responded. We'll add it to the case. But be careful. Now, it wasn't just a courtroom battle. Now it was personal. Over the next few days, I started noticing weird things. First, my car alarm went off at 2 a.m. Nothing was stolen, but my car door had scratch marks near the handle, like someone had tried to break in. Then, I spotted a black SUV parked near my office 3 days in a row. It was always there, but the driver never got out. Coincidence? Maybe. But then, one night, as I was walking to my apartment, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned fast, heart pounding, ready to run or fight. No one. Just an empty street. But something didn't feel right. I started taking different routes home. Started checking my surroundings more. A week later, I woke up to emails from my bank. Someone had tried logging into my personal account 3 times. Then my work email got locked. I called my IT guy. You're being targeted, he said. Someone is trying to hack into your stuff. Could be Daniel. Could be someone he hired. I had enough. I filed a police report. Told them everything. The texts, the SUV, the break-in attempt, the hacking. They took it seriously, but without concrete proof, there wasn't much they could do. Daniel was getting desperate. Back in court, things took a turn. Daniel's lawyer was losing steam. The judge was running out of patience. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel's former assistant showed up. I had contacted her months ago, but she had refused to talk. Now, she was here, willing to testify. When she took the stand, she exposed everything. I processed a lot of Daniel's payments, she said. He told me to create fake vendor names and funnel money into specific accounts. Did you know those accounts belonged to him? My lawyer asked. She nodded. Yes. But I was scared. He told me if I ever said anything, I'd regret it. Daniel's face turned red. His lawyer put his head in his hands. This was it. The unraveling. Then she said something that changed everything. Daniel wasn't just stealing from the business. He was laundering money for someone else. The judge's expression shifted. This wasn't just corporate fraud anymore. This was criminal. Daniel's lawyer immediately asked for another recess. He knew this was bad. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Daniel looked scared. The courtroom was dead silent. The judge leaned forward. Excuse me, could you repeat that? Daniel's former assistant swallowed hard and adjusted her seat. She looked nervous, but there was no turning back now. Daniel wasn't just stealing from the business. He was laundering money for someone else. The air shifted. The judge's expression changed. The court stenographer stopped typing for a second, then caught herself. My lawyer slowly turned his head toward me. This was new. Even Daniel's lawyer looked blindsided. Daniel, for the first time since this whole thing started, looked terrified. His hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. His lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, I request a private discussion regarding this testimony. The judge wasn't having it. This is a public court proceeding, Counselor. If your client wishes to respond, he can do so on record. Daniel's mouth tightened. He wouldn't even look at his assistant. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He wasn't just afraid of losing the case anymore, he was afraid of something bigger. The assistant hesitated, but then she kept going. Daniel had money coming in from accounts that weren't related to the business. Large deposits. He told me it was for side investments, but something felt wrong. Did he say who the money was from? My lawyer asked. She glanced at Daniel. He shook his head slightly, as if warning her. She hesitated. I don't know their real names. But I know they weren't regular clients. He told me to process the payments and shut up. The judge's eyes narrowed. Now we weren't just talking about fraud. We were talking about potential organized crime. Daniel's lawyer whispered something urgently in his ear. I could see Daniel's whole body tense. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel stood up. I need to speak with my lawyer. Now. His voice was shaking. The judge sighed. Fine. 5-minute recess. Daniel practically sprinted out of the courtroom, dragging his lawyer behind him. I stepped into the hallway for some air. That's when I saw Daniel and his lawyer talking, but they weren't alone. There was a third man. Well-dressed. Older. Expensive-looking watch. I didn't recognize him, but something about him set off alarms in my brain. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a family member. He looked like the kind of guy who solves problems. Daniel was sweating, visibly shaking. The older man had his hand on Daniel's shoulder, talking low and slow. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I knew exactly what was happening. Daniel wasn't just trying to save himself in court. He was trying to save himself from whoever was behind those payments. When court resumed, Daniel's lawyer suddenly changed tactics. Your Honor, we would like to propose an immediate settlement, he announced. Oh, no. My lawyer stood up. We reject any settlement. Daniel turned pale. He looked like he was about to be sick. I wasn't sure what was happening behind the scenes, but someone wanted this case to disappear fast. I had no intention of letting that happen. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text came in, drop the case. Now. Then another. You're playing with fire. I took screenshots and sent them to my lawyer and the police. Then, I checked my apartment door. Still locked. No signs of tampering. But my gut told me I was being watched. Daniel wasn't just in trouble, I was now part of something I didn't sign up for. The next morning, Daniel didn't show up to court. His lawyer looked just as confused as everyone else. The judge was furious. He issued a bench warrant for Daniel's arrest. But Daniel? Vanished. His phone went straight to voicemail. His house was empty. His bank accounts? Wiped. It was like he had disappeared overnight. I sat in the courtroom, stunned. 1 minute, Daniel was about to face massive legal trouble. The next, he was gone. My lawyer turned to me. We need to talk. The judge postponed proceedings indefinitely until Daniel could be found. But deep down, I had a feeling. Daniel wasn't coming back. And if he did? It wouldn't be because he wanted to. Daniel vanished. His lawyer had no idea where he went. His house was emptied overnight. His phone was disconnected. The police started searching, but it was like he had simply erased himself. But I knew one thing, he wasn't running from me anymore. He was running from whoever was behind those payments. A few days later, I got a call from my lawyer. We need to meet. Now. We sat down in his office, and he slid a folder across the desk. This was sent to my firm. No return address. I opened it. Inside were bank statements, emails, and a letter. The letter read, "You don't know the full story. Daniel wasn't working alone. There are others. Be careful who you trust." There was no signature. No name. Just that warning. I flipped through the statements. The payments Daniel had laundered weren't just disappearing into his personal accounts. Some of the money had been moved offshore. And then I saw a name I recognized. It wasn't Daniel's. It was someone else, one of our biggest clients. A shipping company we had worked with for years. A company that Daniel insisted we keep doing business with, even when I wanted to cut ties. It hit me like a truck. This wasn't just fraud. This was a money laundering operation tied to people much bigger than Daniel. 2 weeks passed. No sign of Daniel. Then, one night, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered, half expecting another threat. Instead, I heard a shaky, broken voice. I need help. It was Daniel. I screwed up, he whispered. I don't have much time. They're watching me. They think I talked. Who? I demanded. Silence. Then, you were right. About everything. The money. The offshore accounts. It wasn't just me. It was, gunshot. The line went dead. I sat there, heart pounding. Did I just hear Daniel get killed over the phone? The next morning, I called the police. I gave them everything, the documents, the letter, even the phone call. I had no proof of what happened to Daniel, but I knew he was gone. They launched an investigation. And then, a few days later, the real bombshell hit. The CEO of that shipping company, the one we had been doing business with, was arrested. Charges? Fraud. Embezzlement. Money laundering. And guess what? Daniel had been the fall guy. He took the money, sure. But the moment the scheme fell apart, the people above him made him disappear. It should have felt like justice. But it didn't. I sat in my office, staring at the empty desk where Daniel used to sit. I should have been relieved. I had won. I had exposed the truth. But all I felt was emptiness. I thought back to when we started this company. The long nights, the big dreams, the trust. Daniel hadn't just betrayed the business. He betrayed me. And the worst part? He probably never meant for it to go this far. Maybe he started small. A little money here, a little there. Then he got in too deep. Maybe he thought he could fix it before it caught up with him. But in the end, he lost everything. And so did I. The court officially dismissed his lawsuit against me. I was cleared. No charges. No accusations. Just an ugly, open wound where my business partner used to be. I had the chance to sue his estate for damages, but I didn't. There was nothing left to take. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. Clients came back. My reputation recovered. But I was never the same. I became more careful. More suspicious. Less trusting. Because if I learned anything, it's this: sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones who can destroy you the fastest. And sometimes, when karma comes for them, you don't feel like celebrating. Daniel is gone. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he's just hiding. I don't know. All I know is, when I look back at everything, the lies, the courtroom battle, the moment his entire world crumbled, I don't feel angry anymore. I just feel tired. I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret exposing the truth. But I do regret ever trusting him in the first place.